Hey Caleb, this is Rick Sigmund here. So question, considering the people who have not invested in a platform yet, if you were starting completely from scratch, would you go with Canon today or would you go straight for Sony if you're making the initial investment? Hey man, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Looking forward to your answer.
So after about 6 months of trying to decide if I should switch from Canon to Sony, I'm not going to. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about 8 reasons why I almost switched, like so close, like telling a bunch of people that all this Canon equipment that me and my wife have to run our photo and video businesses is now available if anyone wants to buy it. Going from emailing a bunch of my friends about that to deciding not to switch to Sony. This video will be all the different reasons why we decided not to do that. The first reason I almost switched from Canon to Sony is that you get a lot of the pro video features built into Sony cameras, no matter if you're at the entry-level point and shoot with the RX100 series or going up a little bit further to something like the RX10s, all the way up through the A7s and into the FS5s and 7s. You get pro features like focus peaking, zebras, a waveform monitor, or at least a histogram, so you can see whether your shot's in focus or not, as well as exposure. So zebras help you from overexposing your shot too much. Waveform monitor lets you know that you're exposing properly. Having some of those pro features built in is great, but Canon doesn't give you that. So the 5D Mark IIIs, Mark IVs, you don't get those, and these are multi-$1,000s. You don't get some of those pro video features, even though you can record in video. Same at the 60, 70, and 80D level. You're just not getting those types of pro video features that enable you to just make sure your shot's in focus and properly exposed. But I didn't switch for that reason because I'm rarely using these photo specific cameras like the 5Ds for video nowadays. I'm really only using them for a B or a C cam on a multi-camera interview shoot, and I'm using my C100 Mark II for most of the stuff I do, and I do get focus peaking, zebras, waveform monitor, audio levels, all that kind of stuff with that camera. And if I have a bigger shoot, I'll just get a handful of those as rentals. The second reason why I almost switched was that Sony's just innovating faster. So they're putting in a lot of features specifically to things like autofocus that are much better, in my opinion, than on Canon or Nikon or any other kind of brand, really. So things like eye autofocus on the A7R2 is amazing for still photography. The number of focus points in something like the A6300, I think there's like 300 and close to 400 focus points that take up almost the whole screen, versus on Canon, you're getting just in the middle. And their focus tracking as things are moving is just amazing on some of even the entry-level stuff for stills, and then a decent amount of that carries over into video. And the only thing that Canon really has going for it in autofocus is dual pixel autofocus that you get on like the 80D or now the 5D Mark IV, where you can use the touch screen and it can track focus really well. But for stills, I really think that the focusing performance of Sony's is way better. The reason my wife and I didn't switch all the way to Sony for that specific feature is just that, it's a new feature. That's great to have more focus points, to have eye autofocus, but if we didn't know those features existed, or we just didn't have them on our Canon cameras for stills mode, we wouldn't really notice. And, I've gotten by over the past 3 to 4 years shooting video without touchscreen autofocus on the Canon cameras and without some of the focus tracking on the Sony cameras, and really I'm shooting manual focus for pretty much everything on my C100 anyway, so some of that focus stuff doesn't matter to me as much, and it wouldn't really change the way that my wife shot her photography either. All right, the third reason why we almost switched to Sony was the electronic viewfinders. So when you have an optical viewfinder on something like a DSLR, where when you look through the eyepiece, you're actually looking through the lens, but then when you take a picture, the shutter goes, and you're not actually seeing the proper exposure value of what you're shooting. And if you've used an electronic viewfinder before, you know that as you change settings like aperture, shutter speed, ISO, you're getting a live preview of what you're capturing on the electronic viewfinder. And with even the entry-level Sony cameras, I mean, you get a pop-up one here on the RX100. That little EVF is pretty cool. You get them built into the A7 series, the RX10s, and all the way up into their video-specific cameras. And once you get used to shooting with an EVF, it's a little different because you have to have your settings dialed in if you're shooting in a mode like manual. But once you get used to that, I think it's the best way. And also, if you're shooting outside in a bright environment and you're wanting to review your photos or video, you can also use the electronic viewfinder to do that. So I really like the EVF, but the reason why we didn't switch was because, you know, we've got by doing photos with a standard DSLR with an optical viewfinder. And also when I'm shooting video and I'm doing handhold or a shoulder rig or something like that, I can see the LCD on my screen, or my C100 has an electronic viewfinder that's very usable. So I don't necessarily need that on my DSLRs because I'm not really using them that much. But if I was shooting video on a 5D a lot, I would really wish it had an EVF. The fourth reason why I almost switched actually is 4K. It's a ultra high definition resolution that you're getting on a lot of Sony cameras that you're just not getting on Canon cameras. And also, when you are getting it on things like the RX100, RX10, A7 series, it's a manageable file format versus on the new 5D Mark IV. This is a Mark III, but on the Mark IV, it's motion JPEG. It's only gonna give you, I don't know, it's like 15 minutes for a terabyte or something. I don't know. I talked about the math in a different comparison video that you can go check out up here. But, you know, the video format for 4K on Canon is just not the greatest for at least file size. Pretty good quality, but file size, not so much. And so it's great that Sony cameras, pretty much all of them now, come with 4K, which is great. Extra resolution, extra data, easier ability to crop and not lose a bunch of information. It's just, that was really one of the biggest things, is like, 4K cameras are out, I gotta shoot in 4K. But really, you know, 4K didn't matter at all to my wife's photography business. And for me, it was like, well, you know, most of the stuff I'm outputting is 1080p anyways. It's just going to web. Bumping it to 4K isn't gonna be that big a deal. If I had a project that required 4K, I could get like a Canon C300 Mark II and know how to use it. It'd be exactly the same as my C100, and I've gone to classes on how to use the C300 Mark II. So I could go to 4K if I ever needed it. And 4K is not keeping me from making better videos. It's not keeping me from making things that are cinematic. It's not like anything that was made before 4K cameras were out is suddenly garbage. And so 4K to me is not a need at this point. It's been a very long mental battle to tell myself that I don't need 4K. I know a lot of people still want 4K because it is out there, but honestly, you don't need it. Like, go spend that money on something else. Reason number 5 was that I was kind of waiting for Sony's lenses to catch up. They didn't really have a bunch of E-mount lenses to match some of the things that we used for Canon. So my wife and I now have, I think we have 6 L series lenses. We recently got the 135 and then the 100 macro. So if you've watched a recent video like my review of the RX10 Mark III, it's probably too many macro shots just because I was excited by that lens. But Sony now has the equivalent lenses for pretty much all the focal lengths. 135 is an exception for E-mount, but they have really good 50s from Zeiss or their own. The 85G Master that I've reviewed here on the YouTube channel is another great one. They have nice 70 to 200s, and there's just a lot more options than there were a year or 2 years ago. So lenses were a big reason why I was waiting to switch to Sony. And then once they had all of them, I got really jazzed about it, tried them out. They're great quality. I just don't know if they're, like, lenses alone should be the reason why we would switch. Zeiss glass is really great. It's amazing and crisp, especially on a 42 megapixel picture like the A7R II. But, you know, I have a good set of lenses. We have 6 L series lenses. We have 3 other cheaper, like, EFS lenses. and I don't really have a need for any specific other lens right now. So that's the reason why we didn't switch just for lenses. Reason number 6 is actually something I heard a Canon rep, or at least a panel, talk about on a No Film School episode from some film festival where they were celebrating 10 years of Canon EOS cameras and how they helped start the DSLR revolution and things like that. And I can't remember if it was a Canon person or someone else, but they basically said that, Sony is an electronics company, which means they have all kinds of stuff. They make high-end audio equipment and televisions and phones and all this different kind of stuff, whereas Canon is very, very focused on cameras, lenses, printers, scanners, like stuff in the imaging space, not necessarily audio or televisions or what have you. And so they were downplaying the fact that, okay, Sony is this company that, yeah, they make cameras, but they make all this other stuff too, so ours could be better because we're more focused. But I honestly think that because Sony has their hands in televisions and displays and projectors and high-end audio and headphones and microphones and all this stuff and all this experience, they actually can bring all of that into their cameras and into accessories. And so what's really great about Sony right now, I think, is you can use these hot shoes to do more than just mount a flash or a microphone. They're now smart, so you can actually put in the XLR adapters or wireless lav kits that can plug right into here and not need that extra cord. And you can pretty much buy only Sony equipment and get everything from cameras to lenses to microphones to headphones to monitors on top. All that stuff you can stay within Sony, and all the stuff's going to work, and all of the stuff is going to be a single brand. And I think that's really cool, especially if you're starting from scratch and you're buying a bunch of new stuff. Sony's a great route to go because you don't have to go to third parties for microphones, headphones, monitors, wireless lav kits, any of that kind of stuff. And the reason why that specifically didn't make me switch is because I already have a lot of those third-party things that I was excited about if I switched to Sony. So things like lavalier kits, microphones, shotgun mics that go on top of cameras, all that kind of stuff. I already have different options from Rode, different options from who else? Mainly Rode. All my microphones pretty much are Rode. I have an Audio-Technica lavalier set that I use sometimes as well. But most of that stuff, my Tascam XLR adapter that can get really good audio with really good preamps. So I kind of have all those third-party things, so the sexiness of staying all in one brand isn't really needed for me since I kind of already have all that other stuff. Okay, reason number 7 is the PlayMemories app from Sony is buggy, but it's pretty decent. So what that is you can take a photo or video on your Sony camera and transfer it immediately to a mobile app. You can share it quickly and put it online or wherever. But what I actually liked it for more was as I was filming video, I could connect to it with a phone, an iPad, what have you, and I could get a live preview of what the camera is showing. So I've talked about this in the RX10 Mark III review where I had this camera way up high, like way above the people that I was filming because they were doing something on a table, needed a really zoomed in shot. But once that camera is up there, or you mount a camera up in a corner, you have no idea what it's doing, whether it's recording, its battery level, you can't control the zoom or any of that kind of stuff normally. But with the Sony cameras, you can. So I could get a full preview of what the shot was. I could hit record. I could zoom the camera in and out. I could change the aperture if it got overexposed. You could just do so much with that app and wirelessly control the RX10 Mark III or the RX100 Mark IV or some of the other Sony cameras, and that was so handy. It's very, very helpful in situations where you can't get to the camera or you're filming yourself and you want to see what that camera over there is doing without having to buy an extra monitor. I love that. It's very, very helpful. I know that I can do that with my C100 Mark II to an extent with their browser remote, and they're trying to incorporate the Wi-Fi app or sharing to your phone a little bit better with the 5D Mark IV and whatever new Canon cameras are coming, but Sony's just ahead of the game in that way. Reason number 8 is actually the LCD screens on the back. So I really like that on the Sony cameras, you can do tilts, and some of them, you can flip back and do vlogging if you want to do that, but pretty much all of them have the ability to point it down, which is helpful for getting an overhead shot, or, go pretty much 90 degrees from the back for when you're getting low shots. So if you want to get a shot from here, or a hidden shot, or you're trying to get something low without having to crawl on the ground. All the Sony cameras at least can do that if they can't all flip around. And I don't really understand why it's only on the lower level Canon cameras that you can flip around, which has made these really popular for vlogging. But at least now Canon cameras are getting touchscreens, so you can use live view with dual pixel autofocus to take a picture, to film, and be a little bit quicker with focus and framing your shot. But I do wish on the higher end cameras, they let the screen move around and give you a little bit more control about where you're going to place things. And this wasn't a reason for me to switch, because on my C100, I can flip out the screen, spin it around back towards myself, get the low shot, get the high shot, and do whatever I need to do. It really only comes down to when we're using these cameras for stills. And here are a few more reasons why I'm actually glad that I didn't switch. One of them is battery life. I can get 2 to 3 hours out of my C100 batteries. I put a brand new battery in the 5D Mark III, and my wife will shoot an entire wedding on a single battery sometimes, depending on how many photos she takes, and she also shoots film along with digital shots. And you're not going to get that. You're just not going to get that with a mirrorless Sony camera. I mean, you're going to go through 2 to 3 batteries in the same amount of time that you would go through one in a Canon camera. And partially that's because, the electronic viewfinder, which you can turn off and you can do other things. Part of it's because of in-body stabilization, which is a really great feature, and I leave on all the time, which drains battery. It's just their batteries are just smaller, and they don't make the camera last as long. And when you're on a documentary shoot in another country and you can only take so much, and you want to make your batteries last as long as possible on a long day, you don't want them to die in a very specific spot. I just find that whenever I'm using a Sony camera, I buy extra batteries. I have them in my pocket at all times. I worry about that percentage number. I'm turning my camera on and off, which makes me miss things. Versus Canon, I can, I'm okay leaving it on if I'm in a little bit of a transitionary period, and I can just pull it out really quick, get the shot I need, and keep moving on, not worry about battery life as much. Another reason why I'm really glad we stuck with Canon is Canon Professional Services, which thankfully is only about an hour away from me up in Costa Mesa towards LA. And it's just been great for when something breaks. So you drop a lens, your camera gets an error from the battery, what have you. If you have a shoot that weekend and you break it on Monday or Tuesday, we can drive it to Costa Mesa. Oftentimes we will get it back in a couple days, or they'll mail it if we're not in a hurry, and get it in 4 to 5 days. And having a paid annual membership, I get a little bit of a discount, but you also get complimentary cleanings of lenses and checking different things as well. So all I've heard is horror stories from people that have Sony cameras, and things happen and they might not get loaners because they'll need to rent on top of getting it repaired. It might take forever to get repaired. They might charge you a very large amount. And yeah, if you break something, it's going to cost you money. But with Canon Professional Services, every time that I've worked with them has been smooth. The only thing that we've ever had an issue with is, it's just pricey. So just don't drop your lenses, keep lens hoods on them, and use straps, use holsters, use whatever. Just try not to drop stuff, and that will maybe make it less of an issue for Sony. But I really think that Sony needs to build out their professional services a little bit if they aren't already planning to, they definitely need to, because so many people have been buying them recently, and there are going to be a lot of repair requests, and they're going to need to build out a network just like Canon has. Two other quick things that both involve things being dual. I love the dual pixel autofocus on Canon cameras. You know, you don't have it in the 5D Mark III or even my older 60D that I don't really use, but the implementation into the C100 Mark II, even just in the center, is great for when I'm running and gunning, need to get a shot in focus, move on to the next thing. Playing with the C300 Mark II and some of the stuff that they're able to do and tell you whether a shot's in focus in different parts of the screen. I want to see that move into some of these other cameras. And then the dual pixel autofocus on something like the 80D or the 5D Mark IV to be able to just touch the screen and rack focus between things for photo or videos. It's amazing. The other dual thing that's important to me is dual card slots. So Sony cameras haven't implemented even a double SD card slot for some of the stills cameras. And when you're shooting things like weddings or events that aren't going to happen again, and there's no way to make it up, you know, SD cards fail, compact flash cards fail, you lose them, maybe they get corrupt, who knows what. So when we're taking photos on 5Ds, we always have 2 cards in there, double recording, full raw files if possible. And same with my C100, it has 2 card slots. If I'm recording something that I can't redo or make up, it'll have 2 cards in there, fully recording at full resolution. And that's just not something that you're getting in like the RX 10s or even in the A7R2, which is a professional camera that people are using on weddings, and they have 1 SD card in there. And if that card fails, you're in a lot of trouble. So dual card slots and dual pixel autofocus. This is probably longer than I really needed to talk about this stuff, but if you are considering switching, then I know how much research you probably already have done. I watched so many videos about people that had switched, new features on Sony, testing them out. I mean, I've been testing out different cameras for months now, going on shoots with people that are closely tied to Sony and trying all the different things, and I'm not being paid by Canon or Sony or anybody. No company pays me to make videos about any of their gear. I just do it because I love it, and maybe I get stuff on loan from B&H from time to time, or been trying to get more products from different companies to try them out as well. But you know, this is my personal opinion, not a paid opinion. But the biggest things on why I didn't switch is it was going to be a big financial investment to switch because of what we would have lost on reselling a lot of our cameras and lenses, and then how much it would have cost to buy all of the Sony equipment. And we never really found that many people interested in Canon equipment right now. So many people are kind of jumping to Sony, which if you're new or you're trying to acquire equipment, this is a great time to be a Canon shooter because there's all these people offloading their cameras and lenses and all that stuff. So that was one reason, the financial push behind, losing thousands of dollars to switch camera companies was probably the main reason why we didn't switch. The other one being, I love my C100. This thing's a workhorse. I've taken it around the globe. It's been to Africa. It's been to Europe. It's going to go to maybe every continent before I sell it and get another camera. Who knows? And these cameras are just workhorses. I mean, they're banged up. They're heavy. We drop them. They don't always break when we drop them, luckily. And I've never had a reliability issue with a Canon camera other than like a random battery error where it's just like, okay, take out the battery, put it back in, error's gone, good to go, keep shooting. And this stuff's just reliable. And we make our living doing this stuff. My wife and I make our living through photo and video, and this stuff's got to work. And I didn't want to risk having newer technology, having stuff where the batteries were going to die and not knowing whether it's going to work, not having professional services to be able to get stuff fixed really quickly. And I made the video that was why I'm switching to Sony, and I recorded it and everything, talking through some of the bullet points that you heard in this video. And we shared all of our Canon equipment with prices to friends and peers nearby who wanted to buy it. Nobody wanted to buy it. Nobody wanted to switch from Canon. And I kind of had this realization like, okay, so this means that we could double down on Canon, maybe get some of the lenses we wanted, like the 135, some of the other equipment, more flashes, what have you, at a good rate because people are switching. And the other money that we could have put towards, let's say we lost $3,000 to $5,000 selling all of our Canon stuff and getting all this Sony stuff, I could put that into other kinds of equipment, better lighting. I've been shooting on Kino flows for a while. I've been wanting some good LED options. I have a few boxes here of different companies I'm going to test. I have some Felix lights sitting there, some Westcott Flex lights that I'm going to be testing as well. So I could put video investments into lighting. I also have a Kessler second shooter that I've been using for motion control and getting better at incorporating more motion into my videos. It's nice and smooth and making it cinematic. So I decided to make investments into lighting and motion control instead of switching camera brands, which really wouldn't give me any more creative freedom or the ability to travel with less equipment or what have you. So I would encourage you, if you're really looking to switch camera companies, take a step back from the promotional material, what people are saying online, things you've read, maybe even what you've tested and looked at different images side by side, and really think about, okay, is switching camera companies going to make me create better photos or create better videos? Is that really the thing that I should be focusing my time and energy on? And I'm talking to myself more than I am talking to you right now. Are those the things, different equipment, are those the things that are keeping me from where I want to be creatively, professionally, financially, what have you? And if those aren't, then figure out what that is. I like experimenting with cameras as much as the next person, but honestly, going through this testing of different Sony cameras and wanting to switch and then deciding not to, it kind of has me wanting to focus on different kinds of equipment and tech when it comes to making videos. So there should be more videos coming from me about things like lighting, perhaps vlogging. Maybe we'll focus more on time lapses and movement and being more cinematic in what you make instead of focusing on just camera bodies like I have been. There are a lot of people that make video reviews about that stuff and they're very time intensive, especially for me. I spend a lot of time preparing those, filming those, making sure I have all the facts right about comparisons between models and testing them out to show off all the features. So I want to take that and put that energy into other areas. So lighting, motion control, what have you, other techniques and ways to film. So hope you guys will be with me for that journey. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, do that below this video. Give this one a like if you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions about switching between different camera brands or any opinions about whether you've made the switch, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I've been Caleb Wojcik of DIY Video Guy, and I'll see you in another one.